Alright, buckle up, because this one has a whole lot of drama, politics, international tension, and a whole lot of what in the world is going on. So go ahead and drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Okay, so over the last few months, a weird, disturbing trend has started to unfold. German citizens traveling to or from the US are getting detained by American border officials, in some cases for days or even weeks. And we're not just talking about people overstaying their visas or smuggling stuff in that shouldn't be allowed. Some of these people are actually legal US residents with a green card who are just trying to come home after a short vacation or a trip abroad. So let's lock into some of the key stories first, and then we'll unpack Germany's response and what this could mean moving forward. Starting with the Fabian Schmidt case.
Here's what we know so far. According to his mother, Astrid, 34-year-old Fabian Schmidt flew back from Luxembourg 10 days ago. He's an electrical engineer who's a German national, but she says he's been in the US since he was a teenager.
And this one is the case that really blew things up. 34-year-old Fabian Schmidt is originally from Germany, but has been living in the US since 2007. And he has a green card. He's also an electrical engineer. Just your average dude, right? Well, in March of this year, after a trip to Luxembourg, he flew back to Boston Logan Airport to head home to New Hampshire. And instead of walking through customs and heading home like usual, he was detained. According to his mother, who's been pretty outspoken to the media, he was detained under some pretty brutal conditions. Allegedly, he was violently interrogated by 2 agents, stripped naked, forced into a cold shower, made to sleep on a mat in a brightly lit room, denied access to food, water, and even his medication for his anxiety and depression. And, get this, pressured to give up his green card. Allegedly. His mother didn't even know where he was until 4 days later, when he collapsed and was taken to the hospital. Crazy thing is, he had no legal pending cases, only a few misdemeanors from a few years ago. Oh, and he renewed his permanent residency just a year ago. So he was, at this point, in totally good standing. So this wasn't a, oh, you overstayed your visa type deal. This was something else. And people are wondering why. And as you can imagine, Schmidt was not the only case. At least 2 other German citizens were detained under similar circumstances. Let's talk about Jessica Brösche, a 29-year-old tattoo artist from Berlin. She was detained for over 6 weeks after trying to enter the US from Mexico. She spent 9 of those days in solitary confinement.
And that's when Loving first heard about her friend's horrible experience in detention.
She says it was like a horror movie. Like, there's obviously people screaming from all the rooms around. Like, they're just feeding her food through like a little mailbox hole. And she says she didn't have a blanket, she didn't have a pillow. It's basically a yoga mat on the ground and a toilet in the corner.
Brösche spent 9 days in that CBP facility, which appears to be a violation of the agency's own detention standards that say they're supposed to only hold people in those facilities for 72 hours. Again, CBP wouldn't comment on the specifics of the case, citing privacy concerns.
And was reportedly held without any clear cause, and eventually deported back to Germany. My question was, why hold somebody for that long of a period of time if the issue is allegedly they don't have the proper documentation to stay in the States? Why would you hold them in the States? Baffling to me, but I digress. So let's move on to the next German citizen who was also a victim, whose name is Lucas Sielaff, a 25-year-old man from Saxony-Anhalt, also detained for 16 days after trying to enter the US through Mexico.
And on the border, they looked at my passport and decided to ask me a lot of questions and put me to a secondary questioning. And they got immediately aggressive when they saw my German passport, and then my fiance and I, we got separated now. They put me in chains everywhere, around my stomach, on my hands, my feet. Then they put me in a van and drove me to the detention center in Satienko. I was confused most of the time because you are angry, you're sad, you don't know when you can get out, you just don't get any answers from anybody, so it's complicated to explain the feeling, but it's like a chaos. And it's just dangerous, it changed dangerous, and nobody is safe there anymore to come to America as a tourist. I get a lot of questions from people who want to visit America, and I try to help them and tell them my experience, that they need to be careful. Yeah.
He was also deported back to Germany, and as you can imagine, no clear criminal record or reason for denial has been provided. So what do all of these cases have in common? Let's look at the facts. All three cases involve lengthy detentions, poor treatment, and a serious lack of explanation from US authorities. So you're probably wondering, what was the US Border Patrol's response to all this? Well, when pressed for answers, the US Customs and Border Protection, or the CBP, denied most of the serious claims. Naturally, they called the reports of mistreatment blatantly false, but didn't quite say which parts they were disputing. Their only specific justification was drug-related charges when it came to certain travelers. But let's be so for real. There's no indication that Fabian Schmidt was carrying drugs or even had any of that. No criminal charges were filed in any of these cases, and in Schmidt's case, he wasn't even deported, just interrogated and treated like a criminal. So yeah, the response hasn't been super satisfying. So what's Germany's response to all this? Because at this point, it's gotta be diabolical, right? Well, understandably, Germany's not thrilled with any of this, and officials in Berlin are now investigating whether or not there's been a sudden change in US immigration policy. It's also reaching out to other EU countries to verify whether or not their citizens are going through similar things. And the biggest thing that I'm pretty sure all of us have seen is that Germany is now issuing travel advisories when traveling to the United States. I just wouldn't at this point. The German Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Sebastian Fischer, issued a statement saying that they are aware of these cases and as a result are monitoring these situations closely. He highlighted that they expect their citizens to be treated with dignity and in accordance with international human rights standards. They also reminded German citizens that having a visa or an ESTA or even a green card does not guarantee access into the United States, which is scary for me because I wonder if Germany's going to update their travel regulations for American citizens traveling into Germany now that this has happened. The final call in America is always made by the border agent as far as whether or not they'll let you in. And in these cases, it hasn't been going so smoothly. And to help their people, Germany's consulate in Boston is now involved in Fabian Schmidt's case and providing active support. So why is all of this happening and where do we go from here? So this all seems to tie into a broader, more aggressive US immigration crackdown, especially under policies being revived or expanded under Donald Trump's current administration in 2025. While these policies only initially targeted asylum seekers and undocumented migrants, it seems like they're extending the reach to legal residents and even tourists from other countries. And as you can imagine, this is scary, not just for Germany, but for anybody that's interested in traveling into the US. Because if this can happen to green card holders, that should raise some serious concerns. For instance, is there a hidden list of risky travelers based on past minor offenses? And are border agents from the United States being given more power to detain and even pressure people without any explanation? And as I asked before, could Europe or the EU retaliate with stricter entry regulations for Americans traveling into Europe? Because they would be well within their right? These are the kind of questions that European officials, especially German officials, are starting to ask. And it's possible that this issue can spark deeper diplomatic tensions between the US and Europe. So what now? What exactly do you do in a situation like this, especially if you had any plans on traveling to the United States? Well, if you're German or from any country really, and are planning on traveling to the US anytime soon, here are some takeaways. Make sure your visa, ESTA, or green card is completely up to date. Don't give them a reason to shake it for anything. Apparently, have your legal documentation ready, especially if you've had any past legal issues, even minor ones. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And be aware that border agents have wide discretion, which means there's no guaranteed entry. Also, consider registering with your consulate before traveling. It could help you in the future. And finally, and this is arguably one of the most important things, if something feels off, contact your consulate or your embassy immediately. The idea that legal residents from friendly countries are being locked up, detained, and mistreated is absolutely diabolical. And frankly, disturbing. And it's still unclear if these incidents will spark a broader policy shift. But either way, Germany is currently on high alert. And this particular issue is more likely to gain media and diplomatic attention in upcoming weeks. So, Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you guys plan on traveling to the US? I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, but if you are, what are your plans as far as combating something like this from happening? Because I can imagine this is absolutely terrifying. And for people like myself and others that are from the US that want to travel abroad, this could be a problem for us when it comes to traveling into other countries, because as I've mentioned, there's a lot of diplomatic tension because of all of this and other incidents that are sparking up, that are starting to pop up as of recent. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you real soon.